Hello, boys and girls of credit union land, and welcome to the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest from around the credit union community and beyond to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few of those nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest this week is Neen James. She is the author of Folding Time and her most recent book, Attention Pays. She's frequently named one of the top 30 leadership speakers out there. She is a leadership expert who, challenges whether it's the audience or readers or the companies that she works with to leverage their focus and pay attention to what matters most at work and also in life. I knew this was going to be an amazing conversation. I had the opportunity to meet Neen a few years back, and at that time knew we needed her to be a contributor for the community. We will link to all of her articles there. I recommend that you follow her through the socials, pick up her books. All those links will be out there. She is one of my favorite people out there, and this conversation was one that I couldn't have been more excited to have. And I'll tell you this, it didn't disappoint. There were a few nuggets in this that I think, whether you're first year in the credit union movement or you're the CEO having to deal with boards, that you're going to take from this and be able to, just put into action right away. We talked about a lot why focus matters. We talked about saying no to things so that you have more time to work smarter, not necessarily harder, on where you spend and what gets your attention. We went into the leadership and life hacks that Neen has learned over her career working with companies around the world. And we wrapped it all up, as always, with the rapid fire questions, where we had a lot of fun finding out the memorable trouble maybe Neen got into, what her favorite album is, and a whole lot more. This conversation was a blast to have. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did having it. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Neen James. Enjoy. Neen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you today.
G'day, what a treat it is to serve your listeners. And you know that credit unions are some of my most favorite peeps ever.
I absolutely do know that. I think we met the first time either in New Jersey or at the California event that you were keynoting. It was one of the two, I think. And you were a longtime contributor to the community, one articles that I always loved to read when they came through. So I'm a fan also. So that's, I was excited about this conversation, and I know this is a podcast and people can't see it, but I'm wearing my canes that are in there, throws me for a loop. Diving shirt from when
Canes t-shirt, I love it.
You got it, from when I dove the Great Barrier Reef, which was a bucket list trip of my life. So for your Aussie heritage. So anyways, hey, I want to jump right into it. There's so much that we can talk about. I absolutely love what you do, and I think a lot of that's going to come out through this episode. In your most recent book, Attention Pays, you talk about, to get the results that you want, we need to get attention. What do you mean by that? Or could you share with our listeners what you mean by that?
I think attention gets a bad rap. Think about social media now. Like, people are like, oh, she just wants attention. And everybody wants attention. It's my belief that everybody on this planet wants to be seen and heard. And that is something that credit unions know more than anyone, because they are so about serving their members, especially in the community. And so I think to get the results we want and need, both personally and professionally, we have to be able to pay attention. And so what it's really about, I think, Randall, is it's about intentional attention. It's about the choices we make and the actions we take. And we have to be very deliberate about who deserves our attention, what deserves our attention, and how we pay attention in the world. And that's what we explore in the book, about those three different ways that leaders in credit unions, and you and I both know when I use the word leader, I'm referring to everybody on this planet, because you could be a leader in the credit union, in your community, your church, your temple, or in your home, right? But I think that we pay attention in these three ways, and that's what's important to understand when it comes to driving results.
Something that I've always loved about whether it was your writing or seeing you keynote speak is the fact that you not only talk about the professional side, but you talk about the personal side too. You just mentioned in your home, right? Like and that to me, you speak to my heart when you talk that way. So I absolutely love that.
Like it's the same person that goes into the branch every day or into your office, wherever you're doing your work, and I know you have listeners outside credit unions as well. But when you think about this, Randall, what happens is that same human goes to work and makes business decisions. That same human goes home and makes, decisions with the people that they share their lives with. And so I think that too often people try and segment, let's just keep work at work and home at home. And that's a lovely theory, but it's not practical, right? Because if something's concerning you at home, it bleeds into your work in the credit union. If something is troubling you in the credit union, it then bleeds into your home life. So you're the same human. And so I just want to make sure that every human is seen and heard, and that's why attention is so important to me.
I love that. My human, Jill, who's been on the podcast a couple of times, she always talks about bringing your whole human. So, that's, I think you guys share a similar language there. Do you have any hacks that you could share when you talk about, this designing life, like for work and our personal lives, so that we can focus better on who gets our attention?
The key to productivity, the key to attention management is the whole idea of what I call the 15-minute rule, 1-5. Because I believe you can conquer the world in 15 minutes. In 15 dedicated minutes, that's the key here, not multitasking minutes, not distracted minutes, 15 dedicated minutes. I think that it is the key to everything. One thing I suggest to every client, no matter who I'm with, every leader I stand in service of, every entrepreneur, every community person, I always suggest to them that they make one strategic appointment with themselves every day. It's a 15-minute appointment. And here's what I'd encourage people to do. My favorite thing to do and my hack, and just to prove that I do this myself, I'm showing Randall my Post-it note. I make an agreement with myself every day, and I have a 15-minute appointment, and I grab a Post-it note, and I say, today I will. And I choose my 3 not negotiable activities. So before my head hits the pillow tonight, what's 3 things I must do? I've been doing this for centuries. I mean, I may sound like I'm 5, but I'm ancient. And this one little Post-it note has ensured that and here's the reason why I love a Post-it note. I know it sounds crazy, but Randall, I have tried every system. I have tried digital, I've tried paper, you name the app, I've tried it. And the reason I love a Post-it note is, as probably many of your listeners can guess, I can carry that crazy little Post-it note with me every day, all day, and it becomes a decision filtering system. And so before I get distracted or waste time in other things, I use that Post-it note to bring me back on track. So my biggest hack would be invest a 15-minute strategic appointment with yourself. Choose your 3 not negotiable activities, and before your head hits the pillow tonight, what are 3 things you must do? Write it on a Post-it note and then carry it with you everywhere as the daily reminder and decision filtering system. That way you will focus on what is the most valuable use of your time and attention today.
So is that something you do first thing in the morning or when you get into the office? Okay. All right.
Yes. And, some people are really better in the morning. I'm definitely an early morning girl. Like, I love the early morning and I'm great in the morning. And some people, it's not their best time. If you find early morning is not when you shine, then maybe you do it in the afternoon. So you plan tomorrow today. So you might choose to be able to grab a Post-it note and say, tomorrow I'm going to focus on these 3 things. And that's totally cool too. But I think what we need is a direction, because if you don't have a plan for your day, lots of people will very happily take your time. Lots of people will happily take your attention. And that does not get you closer to the goals you have.
One of the things that I've said that I think that I've learned with age or experience or whatever you want to call it, that's important to me is to say no. And I think one of the reasons that you resonate with me so much is the idea that where we spend our time, where we give our attention is so important. And a lot of the times you have to say no so you can have that space to do the good stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right. And no is such a productive word. I love it. And here's the thing. Every time you say yes to someone else, you're saying no to the achievement of something you want to do. And so one thing that you need to be very conscious of is no is a complete sentence. You don't have to justify your no. You don't have to explain your no. Please don't give me an excuse or a reason for your no. Just no. Just no. So I think we have to get clever at saying no nicely. So, for example, someone might invite you to a social obligation that you don't want to attend. You could very simply say, Randall, that sounds like an amazing party. Have a great time. That's it. Like, thank you for thinking of me. That's great. But you don't have to say yes to everything. And I think one of the things that I find in credit unions especially is we're so committed to our members, we're so committed to our team, we're committed to the people that we share our lives with. But here's the difference. Credit union leaders are so committed to their community. You have chosen a profession where you are so active because your membership are the people that you live around. And so the other extra pressure that I see with credit union people is that they're so generous and they're so kind and they say yes to so many things in their community that it adds another level of pressure. And look, I work with all kinds of clients all over the world. And what I find with credit unions is they are some of the most committed, dedicated people, not just professionally and personally, but also globally, because they want to be focused on their community. And so I think for credit unions, even more important to say no, so you can say yes to the things that really energize you, the things that will allow you to be the best version of yourself so you can go into the world and share in an even stronger way.
Oh, I love that. That kind of brings me into something like you just mentioned. You've worked with companies globally. You've worked with a lot of very large companies around the United States as well. Is there something in your work that you've seen that makes a good leader great?
I'm going to be very biased in this, and I'm going to say, as you can imagine, the ability to pay attention. But here's the challenge with paying attention. You know, we get told to pay attention from like kids. Our parents tell us to pay attention. Our teachers tell us to pay attention. We're so sick of people telling us to pay attention. But nobody actually tells us how to pay attention. People don't tell us what to pay attention to. And the really great leaders are the people who have the ability to see and hear everyone that they serve, because leaders serve their team. That's definitely my belief. So I think that their ability to see and hear the people they serve is what makes them a great leader. And instead of just having some kind of latest management theory or just some sort of opinion that everyone should be treated equally, I truly believe that really great leaders pay attention to the individual, to the human that's in front of them. And they treat it with intentional attention, not just a transaction. So many leaders think that one size fits all for their team. And we all know, credit union leaders know it more than anyone, is that that's not true. Every member that works through your branch, they could be a farm owner, they could be a small business owner, they might be a person who's just starting out on their savings career, and they might just be starting in the workplace. And so good leaders understand that everyone needs attention. Great leaders understand that everyone needs intentional attention. We go back to that idea that it's the choices you make and the actions you take.
You used one of my favorite words, intentional. I think we have to, we choose to live our lives intentionally, right? So I wanted to jump to a past book of yours, and it was the Folding Time, one that I think, if I remember correctly, that was the book that was out when I met you. So it was one that I read after an event. Like I said, I was so impressed by your talk. And in it, you talk, and I think we've kind of been getting into this, but getting to the important work done. And not just getting work done, right? Like, I mean, and that to me is something that over the past few years, I will tell you, like your book, seeing you speak, and a few others at the time, it was kind of designing my own life at that time. So it all resonated very closely with me about being intentional, that, to quote another book, that 4-hour work week, and, being intentional. If you could just explain to the listeners what you mean by not just, managing our time, but focusing our energy.
Sure.
What's the difference, I guess, between time management and energy focus?
Time management is a crazy term. I don't believe in time management. You can't manage time. You and I can't manage time. Time's going to happen whether we like it or not. Time is the great equalizer. Time doesn't care how long you've been in the credit union. Time doesn't care what's written on your business card. Even if you have a business card, time doesn't care, because time's going to happen whether we like it or not. And we all get 1,440 minutes in a day, right? The difference is you can't manage time, but you can manage your attention. And so what I believe to be true is that when it comes to truly thinking more about this concept of productivity, it's not about managing time, it's about about folding time. And the book that you reference is based on my belief that of all the hundreds of CEOs that I interviewed for that book, what I realized was it's this combination. Understanding what's important is being able to, yes, manage components of time for sure. And that's really about understanding what's important. It's about managing your attention and engaging that attention in a different way and managing your energy. Now, what this means is you have to filter all the decisions you need to make to ensure that you're focused on the right workflow. It's that you're investing in the right activities to ensure that you are a person of integrity who does what they say they're going to do. And that's how I think you make a greater impact on the world. So managing your energy, managing your attention is about being very deliberate. It's your favorite word. It's the intention behind it, right? And so what I believe to be true is that, well, if we can't manage time, we can manage our attention. And that, going back to our original conversation, is really about, well, who deserves your attention? So who's important to you? What deserves your attention? How are you going to be more productive? And then how are you going to pay attention in the world? How can you be a greater contributor? And important is a word that is defined by each individual. I can't tell you what's important for you. I can tell me what's important for me. But I think we're so often delivering on what we believe is important for everyone else, and we don't always take the time to reflect back and say, hey, hold on a second. This is what's really important to me. And it's unfortunate, Randall. I think what happens is it takes an illness of some kind or a death of someone we love before we stop and assess what's really important. I don't want that for your listeners. I don't want that for the people in our credit union. I want them to make a choice today to say, hey, hold on a second, my health is important, or my partner is important, or my church, community, faith, whatever it is, that's important. And just stop before something horrible happens, before you have to have that conversation with yourself. Wouldn't that be a nice change?
Absolutely. Something you mentioned earlier about the distraction of this digital world we live in today. You and I are talking through Skype, and both of us are very active in the social media machines. Is there I don't even want to say specific to credit unions, but fundamentally, is there a change that people need to make to stay focused, or things that you would recommend to be that most productive self? I think it was a lot easier when we didn't have all the connection.
Remember, technology is not the enemy of our attention. We are. We are fully a choice about how we manage our devices. The challenge has become that so many of us, when devices were introduced into our lives, there were no rules, there's no etiquette. And I think what's happened is we've made technology more important than people. And so it's not uncommon if you go to a restaurant, you see a couple on a hot date and they're both on their cell phones, breaks my heart. You see people driving down the street and they've decided it's more important to update their Facebook status than it is to pay attention to the road, So I think what's happening is we've not created a set of rules. And what I love is businesses that I've worked with. For example, one client I work with, a radio company, we have this understanding that anytime we're going to walk into a meeting where we're going to be doing ideation or campaign generation or just fabulous brainstorming, everyone drops their device in a basket outside the conference room, and then we have our meeting together. So it's a device-free meeting because the agenda of the meeting is about ideation and engagement and how can we better serve the clients. And so I think with credit union leaders, we can do this at home and at work, is we could have some device-free times. We might have device-free meals. We might decide with a friend that we're catching up with for a coffee that we both put our devices away. Now, please understand, I know some people listening to this have little people, they have aging parents, they might have someone who's not well. There's exceptions to this rule every time, but what I think is happening is we have made our device a default position. So if someone's not interesting or we're bored or we don't think anything pertains to us, we go to our device. I want to encourage people to consider things like maybe turn off every notification. I turn the volume off. My phone is pretty much always on silent. Or the other alternative for me is I have my phone on airplane mode a lot. And so that's an easy thing. It doesn't cost you anything. And so what it allows me to do is focus on what's in front of me or the person who's in front of me and make that important. Now, in the event you need to have a device involved in a conversation, then just tell the person, hey, I have a sick child at home or one of my parents is not well. And people get it. People are very understanding. But the very fact that you do that, when I was researching the book Attention Pays, I was horrified to learn of a study whereby they tested how much trust people have when a device is on the table over a meal. People were less likely to trust someone if the device was sitting on the table. They did a different part of the study where they said, what if you just turn the phone over? And the trust went up a little bit, but not much. And what I took from that is the fact that we are making the other person feel less important if there is a device that is included in our conversations. And that is so simple to fix. Let's just put them away. You know, Randall, in New York, there's actually restaurants that if you give the maitre d' your cell phone on the way into the restaurant, they will take 15% off your check.
I love it.
I mean, it's crazy. We're actually paying people to pay attention.
To pay
right?
attention
to
the people you're with.
I think that the simplest thing for people to do is understand that the device is not the enemy. We get to choose how we use it. And if you are with another human, I'd encourage you to make the choice of the human every time.
We did that about a year ago in our house where we both set the do not disturb on our devices in the evening after we're done working. We don't need to look at the stuff anymore, right?
Great. So powerful. I love that.
And I'm with you on airplane mode. It's a beautiful thing to set it to. That's for sure. So I do have just a quick question. It's one that I like to ask in this first part is, you know, there's going to be some of the accounting and finance folks out there. So how does bringing your whole human, being more focused on attention, saying no to things, how does that actually affect the ROI of a business?
You know, I think there's multiple ways. If you look at it in, say, for example, we're talking to a member and we're listening so intently, we can hear the things that they might need they haven't declared to us. Being able to read between the lines. There might be products and services that we haven't offered them yet, but they might be using from somewhere else. Wouldn't it be great if we could bring that business in-house? It could be, too, the simplicity of reduced errors, because if people are paying attention, they're not making the errors that are costing our credit unions money. So I think it's in multiple ways. I also think that if you really want to attract and retain the top talent in credit unions, the way to pay attention to those people that you are recruiting is not just give them a great experience once we recruit them and say, hey, our credit union's amazing, come join our family. It's when you onboard them and pay attention to the retention part of it as well. It's so expensive to recruit new team members, and we invest so heavily in their development. There are so many great resources through CUNA and all of these great places. CUInsight is a very fabulous tool. And so when you think about that, there's so many ways: increased productivity, increased profitability. And I know we don't always talk the numbers because it's about delivering member value. But imagine if we really paid attention to every conversation and there were additional things we could upsell them, that we could offer them, that is really, it's a very positive thing. When I was in banking, don't hold that against me. When I was in banking, one thing I was really good at was always the upsell. Not because I was trying to push things, but because I would listen to what the particular customer was telling me. In the case of credit unions, obviously your members. And I would say, oh, you need insurance. Well, did you know we take care of that? Oh, you're planning a trip. Did you know we had travel? And so I was always able to offer them something else they didn't even know that the particular bank I work for had. And I think that we have members that we could offer them additional services. So if you are an accounting person out there, if you are from the finance team, you understand where I'm coming from. And just even the simplicity of reduction in errors, that will definitely help from an ROI point of view.
I think you talking about your past there in banking is the perfect transition into this, the second part of the show, the leadership and life hacks. What was your path to get to where you are today? Where you became Neen James, the brand, and out there working, as a consultant and working with,
it's kind of
what took you?
It's a squiggly line, I think. I don't think that there's like a straight career path for people. Hey, I didn't even know speaking was a job. I didn't even know you could get paid to speak. I was the kid who was constantly kicked out of class because I talked too much. Every single report card that I had was, Neen's a good student, but she talks too much. I mean, if my teachers could see me now. So I didn't even know it was a job. I was actually attending a training program, I remember quite vividly, and the gentleman who at the front of the room, his name was Mike, and he said, Neen, you should be a speaker. And I was like, like that's a job. And I was like, can you make any money doing that? And he said, yeah, there's a whole industry, a whole profession. And he invited me to attend the National Speakers Association in Australia, in Sydney. And I remember walking into this room and Like all these people were like me. And it was like I'd suddenly found my tribe of people. And so that's when I realized, wow, this is actually a profession. And so I didn't even know it was a thing. It wasn't something that was on my list. But I must tell you, as a kid, I always thought I was going to be a teacher. And for many, all through my primary years and into teenage years, I thought, well, I was going to be a teacher. And my dad was a teacher, and he's now a retired teacher. His whole career was in teaching. And so I kind of thought, well, that's what I would do. And then as I got some realities around that career choice, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But what's so hilarious is, well, I didn't, I guess, officially train to be a teacher and go to get the accreditation. What I do today is I teach. It's just in a very different format, and maybe not a classroom. And let me tell you that I think one of the highest callings on this planet is our teachers, and they need more love and they need more money than we pay them. But I do believe that what I do now is teaching. It just takes a more digital form sometimes. Maybe it's listening to a podcast like this. Maybe it's speaking on a stage and keynoting around the world. But that's kind of how I got into it. And the brand of Neen James, well, that's always evolving like so many of us, right?
I love it. You and I, my sister and brother-in-law are both teachers. So to your father and to them, we thank them, and they do deserve to be paid more. So extremely important. Our entire future depends on them. So has the inspiration changed? Like you said, you didn't set out on this path, but now you've been doing it for a while. Has the inspiration changed with time on the job since you sat in that first Speakers Association group and found your tribe?
I think it's such a great question. I think that I've always believed that everyone on the planet deserves to be seen. I've always believed that they need to be heard, but I couldn't articulate it as clearly early in my career. And I figured that, well, if you could help people get things done, they would get the recognition they needed. And so productivity is a big basis of my work, as you know, because I was always the girl who could get things done. But what I realized was the leaders who were getting promoted were the people who could get things done. The people who were moving ahead in the organizations I worked for were the people who developed a reputation and could articulate how they delivered value. And so maybe early in my career as a speaker, super clumsy. I look back on some of those speeches and think, oh, my Lord, But now, and even my messaging evolves. You saw Folding Time, that's work that I'm very well known for. But what I realized was this whole idea of time management was stupid and crazy because you can't do it, but you can manage your attention. That's what led me on this path. And so it validated for me this desire that I have and this calling I believe I have in the world to get people to be more seen, to get people to be more heard, to give attention a more positive spin. But still, ultimately, while the inspiration probably hasn't changed, the inspiration I get today is from, getting to hang out with fabulous people like you. And when I meet credit union people in the street and they tell me about a time we were together at a CUNA event like 10 years ago, and now they're still doing some of those things. And so I think the inspiration for me comes from the people that I get to meet in my audiences.
What you were saying just sparked a question that I was planning on asking a little bit later, but I think it fits so well here. There's that constant growth that you've had. So, you're kind of fine tuning it and you're going. So a lot of the times I ask people on the show, like how they make sure that their message is staying fresh to the people they're trying to communicate with. While I was listening to you talk there, I'm like, it seems like you've not only kept it fresh, you've actually fine-tuned it and said, I'm very proud of that work, sure. But now this is the new work,
And I think that everything that we're doing evolves because the market changes, technology changes, what we get exposed to changes, our situations change. My personal trainer, her name is Jennifer Jacobs, and she owns a great business called J Method Fitness. And she has many mantras that I love, but one of them was, you grow or you die. And I was like, harsh, but right. True. And so I think that we need this growth. The other thing that she says that I loved it so much I had it made into a sign for my gym. And she says, resist your limits. And I think if we are staying within the limits of our thinking, of our circumstances, of our belief system, then I think that we can't grow. And I'm a huge advocate for, and I don't know if it's because I'm Australian or because I'm so sassy or what it is, but I'm always questioning everything. I'm always resisting, well, why is that rule in place? Why do I need to do that? Why have you always done it that way? And so I'm like that painful little child who's like, why? And in order for me to grow and for my body of work to change, I want to listen when someone says, hey, I tried this, but it didn't work. And I'll say, well, tell me why. Tell me what you were doing. And so my work has evolved because my clients' needs evolve and because their situation changes and because, let's take, for example, some of the companies that I work for. And sometimes this affects credit unions a little bit too, I think. They might have always, let's take credit unions as an example. You have always had multiple generations who have become members of your credit union because their grandparents were credit union members, their parents, the children, and something shifted because the newer generation might have gone, well, just because my parents did it that way doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to then put my accounts with the credit union. And so as credit unions, we've had to constantly evolve and innovate to be able to get the attention of the people who, there's not that loyalty, there's not that precedence anymore that people might have had. Other clients have the same thing. So just what got them to the level of success they've enjoyed doesn't mean that's going to take them to the future. If we want to grow, we have to constantly be looking to evolve our products, our mindset, our belief system. We have to be looking at things very differently, and that requires us to pay attention.
I wish this was video and not just a podcast when I ask this next question. What's your reaction to the phrase, that's the way we've always done it?
Oh, if you could see me, I'm literally like face plant. Like, oh, it makes me crazy. And here's what makes me crazy. Even it's very personal to me because when I joined the oil industry, you got to imagine there's not a lot of chicks in oil in Australia.
I wouldn't think so. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like 20 something, so I was young and stupid. And I remember that the average tenure of one of my team was like 23.4 years, and I was like 20-something. So imagine I'm managing people that were, significantly older than me. And every time I would ask a question, people would say, well, Neen, that's just the way it's done around here. And I would say, but why? And don't tell me that that's just the way it's being done. Now, please understand, I am all about respecting legacy. I'm about honoring the people who have gone before us. And I don't think we should change just for the sake of change. But just because we've done it that way doesn't mean it's going to serve our members in the future. It doesn't mean it's going to serve us as individuals. So yeah, I hate that phrase. It makes me crazy. And if a client tells me that, I'm going to be the first person to say, okay, so why? Like, what would happen if we did something else? Or tell me more about that. And we have to have the courage as credit union leaders to ask the question, is there a better way? Tell me why we've always done that. Is there an alternative? What do our members really want? Because when we start to listen to what they really want, when we start to listen to the things that annoy them, the things that frustrate them, when we ask better questions and we notice their responses, then we have the ability to have evidence to support why we should change. One thing that I've been deliberate about my whole career is I've always researched and found evidence. I don't just say, well, let's just change it because that's not going to fly. But what I've always got away with in my corporate career was I would say, well, Randall, let's just pilot this new idea. Maybe we've always done it this way, but let's just pilot this for the next 90 days and see what happens. And adding the addition of the word pilot implies that there's a safety to go back to an old way, to change it if we need to. But I think if you're a credit union leader, and especially some of my crashers, my credit union younger members, I always encourage my crashers. I always say to them, if you want a new idea, and unfortunately the leaders are going to be listening to this, but I always say to my crashers, just suggest a pilot, because if you pilot something, there is a safety that it can be adjusted later on. Don't just declare what you want to do, get evidence to support your idea, and then pilot it.
I think that is a great hack right there, not only for the crashers and the up and coming leaders, but even the CEO who has to deal with a board and try to get something through, right?
Oh, that's a great idea. That is board management 101.
Absolutely. No, that is awesome. Hey, is there something you mentioned earlier that there are a few things that you took from your trainer that one you actually got made for your gym? Is there something people have heard Neen say so many times they could finish your sentence?
The story that as soon as I say it, you'll understand it. And every audience around the world repeats it. It's my most tweeted line from every one of my speeches. And that is this wisdom that is not mine. It is from my 5-year-old friend. And he said to me many, many years ago, he said to me, Neen, listen with your eyes. And don't we all need that?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the truth. Has there been a piece of advice, a life lesson that you received, and maybe it's that one from the 5-year-old of your 5-year-old friend there, that you've carried with you over time? Something that just kind of been that centering point that you come back to?
I had this beautiful boss. Her name was Barbara. She was this gorgeous, tall, red-headed woman who was just everything I wanted to be style and grace and elegance and smart and respected. And I remember I applied for a job with her, and it was way outside my pay grade and like 4 levels above where I should have been, which was ridiculous. But, I told you I was sassy and I didn't care. So I applied anyway. And in my first interview with her, she looked at me and she said, Neen, you need to be able to tell me 3 things you're good at. Don't blink. Don't look away. And I've taken that advice to heart my whole career. And I think as leaders, we need the ability to articulate what we're good at. And some industries, credit unions especially, sort of frown upon the self-promotion piece. And in America, some of us are better at it than others. And in Australia, we're hopeless at it. Australians are terrible at self-promotion because it's seen to be like big noting yourself, and they look down on people who self-promote. So understand early in my career when I get advice like this, 3 things you're good at. Here's the key. Don't blink. Don't look away. And I want to encourage everyone, whether it is the CEO who is trying to get the board to agree to something, or you are new in your career and you're one of the crashers, you need to be able to tell someone 3 things you're good at. And you need to be able to say it with confidence. You need to look someone in the eye. And if you don't know what they are, stop this podcast, sit down and write down what are 3 things I'm good at. Because every one of us, if you want to be seen and heard, if you want attention for your career, you have to be able to articulate it.
Oh, that is beautiful. It was making me think when you're passionate about something, you tend to look forward and people can tell, I know from whether it was starting CUInsight or some other things, when I speak about something with passion, I don't want to say people tend to follow, but they buy in, right? They're excited for you. So, yeah.
What people can't see, you and I are on video, and
right.
He's seeing me not looking my most fabulous. So thank goodness
fabulous.
You don't have to. However, what you can't see is me shaking my head furiously, yes, 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 because here's what happens. There's a physicality that happens when we are really involved in something, when something grabs our attention and we love it. Our eyes light up, our body language is more positive, we nod like crazy people. And so if you think about the fact that when you can articulate, we all say talk about your passions, and that's all great, but no one tells us how. So what I'm suggesting to people is know what you're good at, write it down, and practice saying it out loud so you believe yourself. Because if you believe yourself, other people will believe you too.
I almost laughed into the microphone when you said we nod like crazy people, because that's what I was doing at that exact second you said it. So I was like, if we were on video, I'm the goofball nodding like a crazy person right now. So this was a question I was really excited to ask you. I guess I could ask this on 2 different levels. One, you personally, but also when you're working with, companies, when you're in that room, you're run into a wall. Is there something you do to clear your head, get a fresh look, get to the other side?
I think it's what you just did, and what people can't see is that you took a breath and you paused. We live in a world where we're so used to noise and clutter, and we think if there's a pause in the conversation, we have to fill in the blanks, and we don't. And so for me, what I've noticed is that I will stop. Now, I physically sometimes will stop. And so if it's, say, for example, I'm with an executive leadership team and people are going into crazy town, I will say to them, now would be a really great time for us to take a 10-minute break. Like physically get up and take a break. So some of it when it comes into a wall, and you might have this in your board meeting where you're not getting resolution on a particular matter, take a break. But the other thing that I find is really helpful is getting out of environment helps you to change your perspective. Getting into nature, going outside, getting fresh air. Our parents used to tell us to go get fresh air as kids and we didn't understand it. But as adults, we understand that change in scenery gives you a different perspective. You have a different view. You come back re-energized. The ability to breathe. I was posting about this on Instagram. The ability to breathe is something that we take for granted because our body just does it, and yet we can use it as a tool. If we hit a wall, the ability to breathe and stop and go, okay, notice that I'm breathing. What do I need to really be conscious of? So sometimes it's the pausing, it's the breath, it's that moment of taking notice. The other thing that I find, and it's not really a hack, but it works for me, and that is that in order for me, when I'm hitting a wall, it's because of my view When I allow others to help me with their view and invite other perspectives in, I get to see it in a different way. So, for example, if I'm facilitating a strategic retreat for a credit union board, I would then invite people in the board to share their unique perspective on a particular issue so we could reach consensus based on all the different opinions in the room. And so I think that's important. I have other speakers that I trust implicitly. If I'm grappling with a particular client or a part of my keynote that is just not feeling like it works, then I'll go out to other professional speakers who I admire, who understand the business and understand me and my speech and know what I'm about. And I'll say, how would you tackle something like this? Doesn't mean I have to take their advice. What I'm trying to do is look for alternative perspectives. So I think I'm a person who's very open to that, but I know myself well enough to trust that when I make that final decision, that's the one I'm going to run with. So if you are hitting a wall and you want to invite other perspectives, know your own beliefs so you can run everything through and filter it through your beliefs, your systems of attention.
So Neen, there's nothing on the calendar. I'm sure that doesn't happen often. What do you like to do outside of speaking and, doing strategic planning with, your clients? What's a free day look like for Neen? What's that perfect day?
My honey is like my most favorite person on the planet. And at the time of recording, we will be married nearly 30 years. That's 30 people.
Congratulations.
Yeah, married in 10 in Australia. Let's say. And so he's my most favorite person to spend time with. So whatever that involves, I will admit that I am a true sucker for travel. I travel for my job. It's like what I do for my profession, which is great, and I love that. But we are always planning our next trip. So free time to me is something that is going to an advance. A trip is researching a new destination. It might be planning something fun about that. I absolutely love anything to do with adrenaline, fast cars, motorbikes, and that might surprise people as well. And so we have some toys that I love that. But I will admit to you that me recharging, my absolute luxury, which sounds so ridiculous, but my absolute luxury is to be able to read a magazine cover to cover, like a physical magazine, not a digital one, but an actual magazine cover to cover. I just think that is like the ultimate in luxury for me because I don't always have the chance to do that. And when I do, it is very much a treat.
Well, you speak to my heart there too. Travel. We are recording this and it will be released at a little bit later date because I take off for Europe on Saturday. So we are spending the summer and working remotely from Spain. So you speak to me. Last part. I want to be respectful of your time. Move into the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. A fun way to get to know you a little bit better. Do you remember the first time? I was looking forward to asking this because like you said, you'd gotten a little bit of trouble in school for talking too much, but the first time you got into memorable trouble, at least something you can share with us.
So many times. But let me tell you about a time. I remember one time that I was on the bus with my little sister and a friend, and my friend had broken something and she was distraught. So I said to her stupidly, let's go home and tell your mom. I'll tell her what happened. What I forgot to do was tell my mum that I was going to my little friend's house after school. My poor mum was distraught. She had no idea where I was. And this is before cell phone, people. So right. I couldn't just text my mum and say, hey, I went to my friend's house. And I remember the horror that was on my mum's face when she finally found us and the relief all at the same time. I'll never forget that expression. And she was like, I have to punish her because she didn't tell me where she was going. But she was so... oh my God, relieved that we were safe.
You were safe.
Yeah, and I think that we don't always have that perspective as kids that someone is really worried about us. And so this is all about being seen and heard, right? I didn't tell her where I was going to be. She didn't hear from me. And so, yeah, I mean, I got in trouble a lot because the sassiness is I always think I can push things just a little bit more. But that's one time I'll never forget. It's almost like I can remember yesterday seeing Mum's face, and I never wanted to subject her to that again. And boy, did I get in trouble.
You mentioned the Post-it note earlier. Do you have daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
Yeah, it's so funny. I don't know if everyone, this may not be everyone's cup of tea. I mean, literally. My first thing that I do in the morning is I make a cup of matcha. Now, matcha is a Japanese green tea, but I go through the ceremony of making it. So I have a special bowl, I have a special bamboo whisk, I have a special bamboo spoon, and I use matcha. It's the favorite one that I love because I like what they stand for in the world too. And so literally there's something very special to me about turning on just one light in my house, creating this tiny little mini ceremony in the moment, and then enjoying this thing that is so good, not just beneficial for my health, but it's the ceremony of noticing. And if you look at the way that the Japanese live life, they have this beautiful ceremony and custom to so many things where they treat things with such importance. So the first thing I do in the morning is my matcha. And then with my matcha, once I have that, then I start my 15-minute appointment. So what is most important to me in the day? Eventually I will enjoy some coffee, but matcha is that thing, and I miss it when I'm on the road because I don't take all of my tools with me on the road, but I do take matcha with me. But there's just something special about the ceremony of it in the morning.
The process. I love it. The random question. What's the best album of all time? That one you can listen to front to back. Not skip a song.
People are going to think I'm crazy, but I don't care. I have on repeat, it's the one that I work out to, it's the one I drive in my car all the time. It's the Greatest Showman soundtrack. So I think I love soundtracks. I am a girl who I like movies, but I love the soundtracks. And there is just something about the words. So if you've never heard the words, even if you've seen the movie, the words are so powerfully written. And so for me, and it's, ever since it came out, I've literally had it on repeat. It's crazy, I know.
That's fantastic. I've seen the movie. I don't know if I've listened to the soundtrack, so I'll have to pull it up on Spotify.
Yeah, pop it on your list for your big European flight.
Absolutely. So I'm a reader. Besides your books, we will link to yours so everybody can pick them up, and I will recommend that people pick those up. Is there a book that you've gifted or recommended, or you think just everybody should read?
Can I give you two?
Yes.
Personally, I think The 5 Love Languages is one of the best books ever written. The 5 Love Languages helps you understand how you communicate love in the world and how others do. And then when you know the love language of someone that's important to you, you can change that. So The 5 Love Languages is one of my all-time favorite books. I've given it a bazillion times over. And then the other book that I've given hundreds of copies to clients and team members, and one of my favorite books that's probably less than an hour to read, is a book called Exactly What to Say. It's by Phil Jones, who's a friend of mine. He'd be a great guest for you, by the way. Phil is a phenomenal speaker, and from the moment I read that book, I literally needed to get it in the hands of as many people as I could, because he has over 25 ways to say things on a daily basis that I hadn't given enough thought to, and it really got my attention. It's a tiny little book, easy read, Exactly What to Say.
Well, that one I will be ordering, and hopefully it gets here before I get on the plane. So that's fantastic.
There's an audio too, and he has a fabulous English accent. So
well, there you go. That's even. I think I have an Audible credit, so we'll do that. I love it. That's fantastic. You've added to my stack, actually. So, and that seems like one that might actually move to the top of the stack. So, as you've gotten older, is there something that has become more important to you? And I kind of like the flip side of this question. What's become less important?
Less important to me has been what people think. And I think that age gives you the benefit of that, right? So in your 30s, you get to the point where you're like, I did okay, right? So I think I realized that when I was 30, I was like, well, it doesn't really matter. And in your 40s, it's even more important to you, right? So I don't really care. It's not that I don't care about the people that I care about what they think. I don't want to disrespect anyone. I do want their recognition and approval. However, I don't really care about the rest, which is very challenging when you do the kind of work that I do, right? Because I have a very public profile. But the thing that is most important to me that I don't think has shifted is relationships. And I don't need an enormous amount of friends, but I do need the people that I love. And, someone once said to me, everyone who is with you thinks they are your best friend. And I thought it was such a cool compliment. I was like, that's amazing that all these people think that. But he went on to say, and this is something that I hadn't really given as much thought to, he said, yes, but you need to be very careful about that. And so I think what's interesting is the people that we love, we love. When I love with my whole heart. And then there's people who are sometimes on the periphery of that, for many of us, right? And so I want to make sure everyone feels seen and heard. But the people that I love, the people that I love with my whole heart, I love them so deeply. And I don't need lots and lots of people, but I do love those people. And so I think what happens as you get older is you have lots and lots of friends, you have lots and lots of acquaintances, because you've collected all these amazing people in your life through school and college and work and experiences. And then there's that intimate circle that you have, that no matter what, no matter where you go, they will always be your people. And I think they're the ones who deserve your attention.
That's beautiful. There's a question that I don't send because I want it to be the top of your mind. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind?
I would say my mom. Because my mom is someone who raised us. She was a single mom initially. And so my mom is, I'm still so fortunate to have her on the planet. But here's why I would say my mom. My mom had the ability to raise two little girls when she was on her own. She then met my dad. But my mom still, as of last weekend, was still like raising money for missionaries in Bangladesh through garage sales and craft. I mean, my mom is always doing something. And so to me, she demonstrates personal attention because the people who she loves, professional attention that while she didn't get a college degree or all those fancy things, she didn't even finish high school. I think she has had a huge impact globally because of the kind of choices she's made and the way that she's so active in her community. And she's like the hostess with the mostess. And so I think when I look at my mom, she is someone who is true success, but not by what's defined in society of how we think it's so important to have the corner office, the big title, the big paycheck, the big degrees from a fancy school. None of those things. Anyone who's around my mom absolutely loves my mom, and I think that's success.
That's the reason it's my favorite question, is because I think we all define success in our own way. So I think that is the perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you for your mom for, raising you to be who you are. I absolutely, like I said, I'm a fan, and I thank you for doing this. Last question. Do you have any final asks for our listeners or final thoughts you'd like to share?
One challenge I would put out to everyone, whether you are in a credit union or maybe you're a vendor listening to this, or maybe you're outside of it and you just love the work that Randall and the team are doing, I would suggest to all of you that the one thing you can do to truly make a massive difference on this planet is to listen with your eyes.
That is the perfect way to end as we stare at each other. Last thing is, I thank you so much for taking the time, Neen. This has been such a pleasure for me. Is at Neen James on Twitter a good way for people to get a hold of you if they have additional questions, or do you have a preferred method of contact?
Yeah, the fortunate thing for everyone is there's only one Neen James online. So anywhere you type in Neen James, you'll find me. But if you really want to see my adventures, Instagram is the place I play the most. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect. I love that. And everybody should follow you. We will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. Everybody should go get Neen's book, follow her everywhere. And again, Neen, thank you so very much. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you. It was my privilege to serve.